The desert stretched endlessly, waves of sand shimmering under the twin moons. The wind carried whispers of ancient dust, and in the distance, jagged metal structures jutted from the dunes, remnants of a war long past. Inside one of the few remaining tents that had survived the harsh storms, he waited. Every shadow seemed alive, every gust of wind a harbinger of danger. His hands were clenched, knuckles white, as he tried to steady his breathing. Then the flap of the tent lifted. A figure stepped in, silent as a shadow, but every movement carried authority. The alien general. She was unlike anything he had imagined in his wildest dreams or worst nightmares. Her armor gleamed in the dim lantern light, metals that reflected not just the colors of the tent, but colors that did not exist anywhere in his human experience. The edges of her suit were sharp, precise, as if designed for both beauty and deadly efficiency. Her eyes, large and dark, studied him carefully. There was no fear there, no hesitation, only calculation. "Are you alone?" she asked. Her voice was calm, melodic, but carried a weight that pressed against his chest. It wasn't a question asked lightly. It was a test, a measure of his truthfulness. He nodded, unable to speak immediately. His throat felt dry, the desert air heavy. Lying to her would be useless. He could feel her analyzing his every reaction, every micro-expression. She was not just a soldier. She was a predator in the way she assessed life, measuring strength and spirit with uncanny precision. With deliberate movements, she reached for the weapon at her side. It was unlike any human firearm. Sleek with a hum that resonated faintly, almost like a heartbeat. As she armed it, the soft vibration against her palms made him tense. The sound, subtle but present, seemed to carry a promise. Survival would not be given lightly, and yet neither would death. "You are far from home," she said, almost softly, but each word was measured. "And yet you survive." He swallowed hard. Survival. He hadn't seen any danger yet, except the constant threats of the desert and the remnants of war. But her words implied that she had seen more, sensed more. Perhaps she knew things about him that even he didn't realize. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing against the fabric of the tent with a hiss. Something moved beyond the thin walls, something massive, deliberate, and unseen. He felt the subtle vibration of shifting sand beneath the tent poles. The desert was alive, a silent predator, and he knew instinctively that whatever moved there was waiting, watching, testing him just as the general was. She did not flinch. She leveled her weapon with fluid precision, scanning the tent's entrance and the shadows beyond. The soft glow of her eyes reflected awareness, alertness that had been honed through years, centuries perhaps, of war and survival. And then her voice lowered, almost a whisper. "I do not just protect my own, I ensure the weak have a chance." The weight of her words settled over him. There was kindness in them, yes, but it was tempered by the cold clarity of experience. She had seen countless beings fall, countless opportunities lost. And now, somehow, she had chosen to focus her attention on him. He studied her, his mind racing. How could someone so alien, so different, carry both such immense power and such restraint? She did not exude cruelty, yet the aura of command she radiated made it clear she could annihilate him, or anyone, in an instant. And still she waited, observing, measuring. Suddenly a faint hiss echoed from the corner of the tent. He turned, but saw nothing. The desert wind was mischievous tonight, playing tricks, or perhaps it was something more. His heart pounded. Every nerve in his body screamed alert. The alien general's eyes flicked toward the sound, unblinking. Without a word, she crouched slightly, adjusting her stance, her weapon scanning every angle, every shadow. "Do not be afraid," she said finally, her voice a strange blend of authority and calm. "Fear is natural, but it weakens the mind." He nodded, uncertain if she was giving advice or a warning. Either way, her presence made him realize that fear could not control him tonight. Not if he hoped to survive. He took a deep breath, feeling the tension in his body slowly ease, replaced by focus. The tent was still, save for the occasional hiss of the wind. Outside, the dunes shifted, and the metallic skeletons of old machines groaned in the night. The general remained silent, vigilant. She moved with a grace that belied the sharpness of her armor. Every step, every gesture had purpose. Even standing still, she radiated an energy that made the hairs on the back of his neck rise. "I have not come here to harm you," she said. "But you must understand, this world is not forgiving. The weak perish quickly, and the unprepared are nothing but dust." He nodded again, absorbing her words. There was wisdom there, forged in fire, tested in battlefields he could scarcely imagine. And yet there was also something else, an invitation, a challenge. He felt it in the way she watched him, the subtle way her weapon never left her side, the faint hum of energy that pulsed from her armor. Then came a sudden sound, sharp and deliberate, a thump against the tent wall. Something or someone was outside, testing him. He instinctively moved closer to her, and for the first time he noticed the faint markings on her armor, scars of past battles etched into the metal, symbols of victories and defeats alike. Her hand moved not to push him away, but as if acknowledging his presence, accepting him in this precarious moment. "You must decide," she said quietly, her eyes meeting his. "Do you fight for survival or do you surrender to fear?" The question struck him like a blow. He realized then that this night, this encounter, was not about the desert nor the unknown presence outside. It was about him, about choice, about courage, about humanity in its rawest form. Could he rise to meet the challenge posed by a being so superior, yet so strangely aligned with him? The air in the tent grew thick. Time seemed to slow, each heartbeat echoing loudly in his ears. Outside, the desert breathed, shadows shifted. And somewhere in the distance, a low rumble began, the sound of something massive approaching, unseen but undeniable. The alien general's stance did not waver. She was ready. And without a word, she communicated a simple truth. Survival required courage, and courage was not a gift, it was earned. He straightened his back, trying to match her composure, though he felt the tremor of fear still coursing through him. He knew that what was about to happen would test him beyond anything he had faced before. Yet in the calm of her presence, he also felt a strange reassurance. She would not let him face this alone, not entirely. Then the desert seemed to explode with movement. A shadow, impossibly fast, darted across the dunes toward the tent. Sand erupted, and the wind carried the sound of distant metal scraping against metal. The alien general reacted instantly, weapon raised, her body moving like a coiled spring. He followed her lead as best he could, adrenaline surging through his veins. Whatever was coming, it would not find him cowering. Not tonight, not with her here. As the first figure emerged from the dark, monstrous and alien, he realized that this encounter was only the beginning. The general's presence had already changed something in him. Fear had not vanished, but it was tempered now by resolve. And in that moment he understood, survival was not just a matter of luck. It was a matter of will, courage, and the guidance of those willing to fight beside you, even if they were from worlds beyond imagining. The shadow lunged. She fired, and the air vibrated with energy. Light cut through darkness, illuminating the sand and casting long, jagged shadows. He dodged instinctively, heart racing, and then something unexpected happened. She moved toward him, shielded him with a precision and speed that defied comprehension. It was more than protection, it was a statement. He was not just a human. Tonight he was part of something greater. The first clash passed, leaving a silence heavy with anticipation. He looked at her, at the alien general, and realized that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The desert night, with all its dangers and mysteries, had already begun to shape him, teaching him that even the smallest human could rise, if courage and wisdom guided the hand. And so, with the hum of her weapon still in the air and the shifting sands waiting outside, he prepared himself. The night was far from over, and the test of survival and of humanity was only beginning. The desert outside the tent was no longer just empty sand. Shadows moved with purpose, shapes that seemed almost alive. The low rumble of approaching forces grew louder, echoing off distant rock formations. The alien general did not hesitate. Her movements were precise, each one a measured response to the threats she sensed. She crouched slightly, rifle humming faintly, eyes scanning in every direction. He stayed close behind her, trying to mimic her alertness, though he knew he would never match her instinct. Even so, he felt a strange confidence in her presence. She wasn't just a warrior, she was a shield, a guide, a force that could turn the tide of any encounter. He had no choice but to trust her completely. Then a massive shadow emerged from the dunes. It moved with terrifying speed, limbs jagged and long, glinting with what looked like metal scales. The desert wind carried the faint sound of claws scraping against sand, a grinding noise that sent chills down his spine. He froze for a split second, but the general's voice cut through the fear. "Move," she ordered, and he obeyed without thinking. She fired first. The weapon emitted a concentrated beam of energy, slamming into the creature with a deafening crack. Sand and debris exploded around it, but the shadow did not stop. Instead, it twisted and lunged again, faster this time, as if the first strike had only angered it. He stumbled, almost falling, but she caught his arm, steadying him. Her eyes did not leave the creature. Every movement was controlled, calculated. He realized that she was not simply shooting blindly. She was predicting its actions, anticipating its strength, calculating the perfect strike. And in that moment, he understood why she had survived countless battles. She saw the battlefield differently. The creature roared, a deep, vibrating sound that made the ground tremble beneath them. He felt it in his chest, a primal reaction that demanded he run, but running was not an option. Not with her eyes on him, not with the lesson she was teaching silently. Courage was action, not thought. "Stay low," she commanded. He dropped to the sand, feeling it bite into his palms as he pressed his face close to the ground. She moved with fluid speed, firing again, each shot precise, each blast weakening the creature just slightly. But it was resilient. Every time she struck, it adapted, dodging and weaving with unnatural skill. He watched in awe. The general was not just a soldier, she was a force of nature. And yet there was something human in her movements, something familiar that he could not explain. Maybe it was the care with which she moved around him, the way she shielded him instinctively, or the unspoken understanding that he was not alone in this fight. The creature charged again, faster, more aggressively. The general pivoted, landing a strike that sent it crashing into a dune. Sand cascaded down, and for a moment the desert seemed to hold its breath. She turned toward him, checking to see if he was safe. He nodded, feeling his own adrenaline surge, knowing that if it weren't for her, he would already be gone. But there was no time to celebrate. More shadows emerged from the dunes, each one more massive than the last. They moved like coordinated hunters, circling the tent, testing their prey. The general's eyes narrowed. She scanned the terrain, analyzing every movement, every pattern. "You must listen to me," she said urgently. "Follow my lead exactly. One wrong step and it will end." He nodded, understanding that her words were not just advice. They were instructions for survival. She moved to the tent flap, peering outside briefly, then signaling him to follow. Together, they stepped into the open desert, the wind whipping against their faces. The shadows moved closer, circling, but she did not hesitate. She advanced, weapon ready, every motion deliberate. The creatures lunged. The general fired with precision, energy beams cutting through the darkness, illuminating their alien forms. The sand exploded around her with each shot, and he had to force himself to keep moving to stay upright in the chaos. Despite the fear, a strange calm settled over him. The general's presence was grounding. Her confidence, her skill, her unwavering focus. It reminded him that survival was possible even in the most hopeless situations. The battle intensified. He ducked as a creature leaped over him, claws extended. She spun, firing at its side, forcing it to retreat. He felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. He was human, fragile, outmatched, but with her guidance, he was part of something larger, something powerful. After what felt like hours, though it was only minutes, the creatures retreated. They melted back into the desert, leaving behind disturbed sand and shattered metal fragments. The air was thick with heat and the hum of her weapon winding down. He fell to his knees, gasping for breath. She stood over him, armor scorched but intact, weapon still ready. Her eyes scanned the horizon, ensuring the threat had passed. Then she looked down at him, expression unreadable. "You survived," she said simply. I didn't know if I would," he admitted, voice trembling. "That is why you must learn," she replied. "Strength alone is not enough. Courage, strategy, patience, these are the tools of survival." He nodded, absorbing her words. He realized that she was not just a protector. She was a teacher, guiding him not just through this fight, but preparing him for whatever came next. The desert night seemed quieter now, though the wind still carried whispers of movement. He looked around, seeing the scorched sand, the marks of battle, and the alien general standing vigilant. Despite the danger, despite the fear, a strange sense of hope filled him. He had faced the impossible and lived, and it was only the beginning. They moved back toward the tent, cautious, alert. The general did not speak much, letting actions guide the lesson. He followed, feeling the weight of the night pressing down, but also the strange comfort of knowing that he was not alone. Once inside, she finally relaxed slightly, though not completely. Her eyes scanned the tent, her ears alert to the faintest sound. He felt the tension in his own body slowly ease, replaced by determination. He was learning not just how to survive, but how to fight, how to think, how to act under pressure. "Tell me," he asked finally, voice low, "who are they? What are they?" She paused, considering the question. "They are the remnants of a war you cannot imagine, beings who survived their own destruction, hungry, cunning. They test strength, they test fear, and they judge." He shivered, but he did not show it. "And me. You," she said, "are being tested as well. But unlike them, you have something unique. The choice to rise, to fight, to endure. That is the human advantage. Do not underestimate it." Her words settled in his mind like a seed, small but potent. He realized that survival was more than physical. It was mental, emotional, spiritual. And for the first time, he felt a flicker of confidence, not just in himself, but in the potential of humanity, fragile yet unbroken. The night continued long and harsh, but he felt something shift inside him. He no longer saw himself as weak or alone. He saw possibility, strength, the capacity to endure, to learn, to fight alongside a being so powerful yet so willing to trust him. Hours passed. The desert remained unpredictable, the winds restless, but no more attacks came. The general finally lowered her weapon, though her posture remained alert. She motioned for him to sit. Together they rested, eyes scanning the horizon, minds alert yet calm. "You have potential," she said finally, almost softly. "The desert is a harsh teacher, but it rewards those who learn. Tomorrow will bring more challenges, and you must be ready." He nodded, feeling exhaustion, relief, and a spark of determination all at once. He was human, yes, but not helpless. With guidance, with courage, with focus, he could endure. And perhaps, just perhaps, he could rise to a level even this alien general would respect. The desert night stretched endlessly, stars glittering cold and distant above. The air was sharp with sand and cold, but inside him a warmth burned, a sense of purpose, a sense of survival, a sense of humanity standing tall in a universe that often seemed indifferent. He looked at the alien general, armor scarred but body poised, eyes sharp and wise. And he understood finally that tonight had been more than a fight. It had been a lesson, a test, a crucible, and he had survived. Tomorrow would come, and with it new trials. But he was ready. The desert morning broke with a harsh light that reflected off the sand, blinding and unforgiving. He woke stiff, muscles aching from the previous night's battle, and from the tension that never fully left him when the alien general was near. She was already awake, standing outside the tent, scanning the horizon as if she could see into the dunes themselves. Her armor gleamed under the twin suns, colors shifting in ways that no human eye could fully comprehend. "Rest is important," she said without turning to him, her voice calm but carrying the same authority as always. "But action cannot wait." He rubbed his eyes, trying to focus. The desert seemed quiet now, but the hum of danger lingered in the air. He had learned one thing last night: nothing in this world, or any other, was ever truly safe. Every grain of sand could hide a predator, every shadow could mask a threat. And yet he felt a strange confidence, a growing sense of purpose. He had survived. She finally turned to him, her eyes sharp, examining him as if she could measure his potential with a glance. "Today will be harder," she said simply. "You are not just learning to survive, you are learning to lead." The words struck him. Lead. He was human, fragile, barely able to hold a weapon against these creatures. Yet somehow she saw something in him, something that mattered. He swallowed, nodded, and followed her into the open desert. The wind carried the scent of metal and sand, a sharp reminder of last night's battle. In the distance, he saw movement, shapes emerging from the dunes, larger and more numerous than before. The creatures had returned, this time with coordination, circling in patterns that suggested intelligence. They were not mindless predators. They were strategists. The general crouched, lowering her weapon slightly, and gestured for him to stay low. "They are testing you," she said. "Not just your strength, but your decisions, your ability to act under pressure. They learn from mistakes. Do not give them the advantage." He nodded, heart hammering as he pressed against the sand. The dunes around them shifted with the creatures' movements, their shadows stretching unnaturally long in the morning light. He could feel the vibrations in the ground as they moved closer, a constant, low thrum that matched the rhythm of his own racing pulse. Then, without warning, one of the creatures lunged from the dunes. It was faster than anything he had seen, claws extended, teeth glinting like knives. He froze for a moment, and instinct screamed at him to run. But the general's hand on his shoulder pushed him forward. "Act," she commanded. He raised his weapon, fumbling slightly with the unfamiliar controls, but before he could fire, the general's beam cut through the air, striking the creature and forcing it back. Sand exploded around them as the beast tumbled, but it was not defeated. It rose, eyes glowing with intelligence, and leaped again. The general moved with a precision that left him breathless. Every strike, every step, every calculation was perfect. She was a whirlwind of controlled power, shielding him, guiding him, teaching him without words. He began to follow her lead instinctively, moving in ways he didn't know he could, firing when she indicated, ducking when she ducked, understanding patterns he had never noticed before. And then he noticed something new. Another figure, similar in stature to the general but moving differently, appeared among the creatures. Its armor was darker, its movements more fluid. It was intelligent more than any of the others, and it was watching the general and him. "She is learning," the general whispered almost to herself, "and so must you." The creatures adjusted their movements, testing them both. It was no longer a simple battle of strength. It was a challenge of strategy, of mind. He realized then that survival meant more than shooting or dodging. It meant thinking ahead, predicting, acting decisively. The figure stepped forward and the creatures responded instantly, surrounding them in a wide circle. He felt fear rise again, but he also felt something else: resolve. He had learned from the general, absorbed her lessons, and he was no longer paralyzed. He could move, could fight, could contribute. The battle escalated. Energy beams lit the desert like lightning strikes. The creatures leaped and attacked, but the general and he moved in perfect synchrony. She protected him when he faltered. He provided support when she needed it. Together, they became a single, flowing force against overwhelming odds. And then the figure spoke, not in words, but in a series of low vibrations, almost like a challenge, almost like a command. The general's eyes narrowed and she pivoted, adjusting her stance. "It is testing not just us, but the bond between human and alien," she said. "If you fail, it will end us both." He understood. This was a trial, not a mere attack. The creatures were not random threats. They were sentinels, guardians, measuring worth, strength, and courage. And he was part of the equation. The next wave came with terrifying speed. One of the creatures leaped directly at him, claws extended. He froze, but then remembered the general's lessons: timing, patience, observation. He aimed carefully, fired, and the energy struck the creature in a vulnerable spot. It fell stunned, giving the general an opening to strike another. The battle raged, each moment a test of endurance and willpower. He began to feel something he had never known before: focus. Calm, precise focus. Fear was still there, but it was no longer paralyzing. It was guiding him, sharpening his senses, making him alert to every movement, every threat. Hours seemed to pass, though in reality it was less. The sun rose higher, baking the desert and casting harsh shadows. The creatures slowed, tested, and finally, one by one, they retreated. The figure in dark armor lingered, watching, assessing. Then, with a final, deliberate step, it disappeared into the dunes. The general lowered her weapon, breathing steadily but remaining alert. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You have done well," she said simply. He sank to the sand, exhausted, heart still racing. I didn't know if I could," he admitted, voice trembling from adrenaline. "You did more than survive," she replied. "You adapted. You learned that is what makes a difference. That is what makes humanity strong." Her words struck him deeply. It was not just about courage or strength. It was about growth, about understanding, about rising to challenges that seemed impossible. And in that moment he felt pride, not arrogance, not triumph, but pride in what humans could achieve even in the face of overwhelming odds. The desert seemed quieter now, though the wind still whispered and shifted the sand. The general motioned for him to follow her. Together they moved across the dunes, cautious but steady, alert to any lingering threats. He noticed how she observed everything: the shape of the dunes, the footprints of the creatures, the subtle shifts in the wind. He realized that survival required more than reaction. It required observation, anticipation, understanding. As they walked, she spoke. "There will be more tests, harder than this. You must be ready, not just with weapons, but with your mind and your instincts. You must learn to see as I see, to anticipate as I anticipate, to act as I act." He nodded, absorbing the weight of her words. The challenges ahead were unknown, but he felt something shifting inside him. He was not just a human in the desert. He was learning to become something more, something capable. They reached a ridge overlooking the battlefield from the night before. Scorched sand, jagged metal, and faint trails of movement marked the sight. The general paused, scanning the horizon. "They will come again," she said, "and next time you will be ready." He looked at her, understanding finally what she had been teaching. It was not just survival. It was preparation, anticipation, and the courage to face the unknown. He felt a strange bond forming, not just with her but with the challenge itself. Humanity had faced countless threats before, and now, standing in this alien desert, he began to understand the depth of their resilience. "Why me?" he asked finally, voice quiet. "Why not someone stronger?" She looked at him, eyes calm and unreadable. "Strength alone is meaningless. Courage, intelligence, adaptability, these are rare. You have them. That is why you are here. That is why you survive." Her words settled over him, heavy with meaning. He felt both humbled and inspired. He had faced monsters, seen the power of the desert, and survived because of his choices, his focus, and the guidance of this alien warrior. And he knew that the next challenge would demand even more. The wind shifted again, carrying the faint hum of distant movement. He felt it in his chest, a reminder that this desert and these creatures never rested. But he also felt a spark of confidence, a quiet certainty that he could endure, that humanity could endure. Hours passed, and the heat of the sun became oppressive, but they moved steadily, scanning every dune, every shadow. He noticed details he had never before: the faint marks in the sand, the subtle shifts in wind direction, the trails left by the creatures. Each observation added to his understanding, each moment refining his instincts. By the time the sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the dunes, he felt transformed, not just physically but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. He had faced fear, learned strategy, adapted to overwhelming odds, and survived. And he knew that tomorrow, when the desert tested him again, he would be stronger. The general finally allowed a moment of rest. They sat together on the ridge, looking out over the desert that had challenged them both. She did not speak much, but her presence was enough. She radiated confidence, skill, and experience, and in that quiet he felt a bond forming, a shared understanding that transcended species, language, and culture. "You are ready for more," she said finally, breaking the silence, "and they will come. But now you have learned to stand. That is everything." He nodded, looking at the desert, the dunes, and the horizon beyond. He was human, fragile, and limited, but he was no longer powerless. The alien general had taught him not just to survive, but to rise, to fight, and to endure. And in that moment, he realized that humanity, despite its weaknesses, had a strength that even these ancient creatures could not ignore. The night approached, and with it the promise of more challenges, more trials, more battles. But he felt ready. And for the first time, he understood something profound. Survival was not about avoiding danger. It was about embracing it, learning from it, and growing stronger because of it. He looked at the general one last time as darkness fell over the dunes. She met his gaze, and in that silent exchange, he felt a strange sense of certainty. Whatever came next, humanity would endure. Humanity would fight, and humanity, in its stubborn resilience, would rise. The desert night was darker than ever, a blanket of black broken only by the faint glimmer of the twin moons. The air was heavy, thick with tension, and every sound seemed amplified: the whisper of wind over the dunes, the distant groan of shifting sand, the faint hum of energy from the alien general's armor. He felt it deep in his chest, the same rhythm of fear and excitement that had defined every moment since the first encounter. Tonight, the final test would come. The general stood at the edge of a high dune, scanning the horizon. Her posture was rigid, every movement precise, every sense alert. He approached, careful to match her rhythm, feeling the weight of the desert around him. The lessons she had taught were no longer abstract. They were instinct, embedded into his mind and body. Observation, patience, courage, timing, he had absorbed them all, and now it was time to apply everything he had learned. "They will come," she said quietly. "This is not merely a test of survival. It is a test of resolve. They will challenge your mind, your body, and your spirit. Fail, and there is no mercy." He swallowed hard, his hands steadying over the weapon she had given him. I understand," he said. "I'm ready." "Good," she replied, eyes narrowing. "Then show me what humanity is capable of." The first movement came from the shadows. A low rumble echoed through the dunes, vibrating through the sand, through the ground, through his very bones. Shapes emerged, larger, faster, and more coordinated than any he had seen before. Dozens of creatures moving with intelligence, encircling them, each step precise, calculating, hunting. Among them, the dark figure appeared again, more imposing than before, its eyes glowing faintly with unreadable intent. He felt fear rise instantly, sharp and raw. But he remembered the general's lessons. Fear could not control him. Observation, patience, anticipation, these were his weapons now. He adjusted his stance, scanning for patterns, noticing the subtle shifts in the creature's movements. "They are testing everything," the general said, her voice low. "Strength, courage, strategy, and now leadership. Follow my cues, but act when the moment comes. We are a single force tonight." He nodded, absorbing her words. He was no longer just a human being facing monsters. He was part of a coordinated unit, learning to fight as she fought, to anticipate as she anticipated, to survive as she survived. The creatures lunged simultaneously, testing their limits, probing their defenses. The battle erupted with a chaos that seemed almost unbearable. Energy beams tore through the air, sending showers of sand flying. He fired instinctively, targeting weak points the general had pointed out, and felt a rush of adrenaline as his shots hit true. The creatures shrieked, recoiled, adapted, and attacked again. One leapt toward him, claws extended. He dodged, rolled, and struck back with precision, remembering her instructions. It landed a glancing blow, but he pressed forward, not hesitating. The general moved beside him, covering his flank, firing with surgical accuracy. Together they became a single, fluid force. Every motion complemented the other, a dance of survival and skill. The dark figure advanced through the chaos, leading the creatures with calculated efficiency. It was unlike anything he had faced, faster, smarter, anticipating moves before they could be made. The general's eyes locked onto it, and he felt the tension spike. "This one is the key," she said. "It controls the rest. If it falls, the others will scatter. But if we fail together." He swallowed, nerves tight, and nodded. The final test was here. This was no longer about surviving. It was about asserting will, using everything he had learned to lead, to act decisively, to endure. The first strike came from the figure, a blur of motion that seemed impossible. The general fired, striking it in the side, but it twisted away effortlessly. He acted on instinct, aiming at its exposed flank, remembering her guidance about timing and precision. His shot hit true, and the figure staggered slightly, hissing, momentarily losing its composure. The general seized the opportunity, firing again, striking it hard. The creatures faltered, confusion rippling through them as they saw their leader weakened. He realized then that this was more than a fight. It was a demonstration of how humanity, even in its vulnerability, could adapt, learn, and act decisively to overcome threats that seemed insurmountable. He advanced, weapon steady, using every lesson the general had taught him. He ducked under attacks, timed his strikes, and even managed to shield her briefly when a creature lunged unexpectedly. Adrenaline surged, and with each successful maneuver he felt confidence grow. He was not just surviving, he was taking control. The figure recovered, charging again, faster and more violently. But this time he anticipated its movement. He fired, striking a joint, disrupting its balance. The general followed up with a precision strike, and together they forced it to the ground. The remaining creatures paused, confused, uncertain without their leader. "Now!" the general shouted. He acted immediately, moving forward with determination, firing at the creature's weak points. The combined force of his strikes and the general's attacks created chaos among them. One by one, they fell back, retreating into the dunes. He felt the surge of victory, but tempered it with focus. The general's lessons had taught him that complacency could be deadly. Finally, the dark figure rose once more, staggering, exhausted but defiant. It hissed, eyes glowing, and advanced toward him. He stood his ground, weapon raised, heart pounding, remembering everything, the fear, the lessons, the courage. He was ready. The final clash was swift and intense. Energy beams collided, sand exploded, and the desert became a storm of light and sound. He moved instinctively, striking when openings appeared, dodging with precision, coordinating seamlessly with the general. And then, with a final, calculated strike, the dark figure fell. The remaining creatures scattered instantly, fleeing into the dunes, leaving behind only disturbed sand and the faint echoes of their presence. Silence fell, heavy and profound. He sank to the sand, breathing hard, chest heaving, overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of the battle. The general approached, weapon still ready, scanning the horizon. When she finally lowered it, she looked at him, eyes sharp but approving. "You have done well," she said. "Tonight you learned more than survival. You learned to fight, to lead, and to endure. That is humanity's greatest strength." He nodded, exhaustion and pride mingling. I didn't know I could do it," he admitted. "You did," she replied simply. "Courage and adaptability define your species. Even in weakness you rise. That is why you survive where others fall. That is why humanity matters." He felt the truth of her words resonate deep within him. It was not just about fighting or winning. It was about resilience, about using intellect and courage to overcome overwhelming odds, about standing tall when everything seemed designed to break him. The desert stretched endlessly around them, quiet now, peaceful in contrast to the chaos that had raged moments before. The wind shifted, carrying whispers of sand and distant movement, but he felt ready. He had faced fear, he had acted decisively, and he had survived. He had proven in the harshest way possible that humanity could endure. The general's eyes softened slightly as she surveyed him. "You are ready for the challenges ahead," she said. "Tomorrow will test you again, but now you understand. Humanity is not fragile, it adapts, it endures, it rises." He looked at her, understanding finally the depth of what she had taught him. The bond between them was unspoken, forged in the heat of battle, in the shared struggle for survival. She had trusted him, guided him, and allowed him to discover strength he had never known. And in doing so, she had shown him the true essence of what it meant to be human. Night deepened, but the twin moons cast a pale light over the desert. He felt a quiet determination settling within him, a sense of purpose that would carry him through whatever lay ahead. He was no longer just a survivor. He was a fighter, a learner, a human capable of standing against forces far greater than himself. The general turned to him, motioning toward the horizon. "We move forward. The desert never rests, and neither can we. But remember this, the strength of humanity is not in its weapons or its numbers, but in its courage, its intelligence, and its will to endure." He nodded, absorbing her words. Each syllable was a lesson, a promise, a challenge. He had faced death, fear, and overwhelming odds. He had learned to act with precision, to anticipate, to survive. And now he understood the profound truth. Humanity could rise even when the odds were impossible, even when all seemed lost. Together they moved forward across the dunes, shadows in the moonlight, allies united by battle, trust, and shared purpose. The desert stretched before them, vast and unforgiving, but he no longer felt powerless. He felt ready, determined, and alive in a way he had never known. As dawn approached, painting the dunes with pale gold, he looked at the horizon and felt a sense of awe. The challenges ahead would be greater, but he knew now that he was capable. Humanity was capable. They could face the unknown, endure the impossible, and rise stronger for it. The alien general walked beside him, silent but ever watchful, a living testament to skill, courage, and discipline. And he walked with her, human but no longer fragile, learning from her, adapting, growing stronger with every step. Together they faced the desert, the creatures, and whatever mysteries awaited, knowing that humanity, though tested, fragile, and often underestimated, would endure, rise, and prevail. The desert stretched endlessly, a challenge, a teacher, a proving ground. And he, guided by the alien general, had finally learned what it meant to rise above fear, above weakness, and above doubt. He had discovered the true strength of humanity, the courage to act, the intelligence to learn, and the will to endure against all odds. And as the twin suns began to rise, casting long shadows across the sand, he knew that whatever came next, humanity would stand, and humanity would rise.